Hello and welcome back to the CAFS podcast. This is episode number 52 and today we're chatting about the 5 mistakes our students are still making in community and family studies and what they can do instead in their answers, in their responses, in their assessments, their exams, because look, I've been around CAFS for a long time and long enough to know that some of our students are still not getting it. And to be honest, to be really honest with you, I think because it's a lot of teachers just don't know. I've worked with lots of CAFS teachers probably since about 2007 is when I did HSC marking for the first time. Then 2008, I did some sessions around New South Wales, some HSC sessions. I worked with teachers and their students, and I did that year after year. I also then did professional learning probably in about 2010. So I've been around a CAFS and a lot of different experiences for a really long time. I think it's still part of what's missing in our course. And we're going to unpack those 5 mistakes that our kids are still making in CAFS today. But look, I hope today's episode, I know today's episode will be completely jam-packed. I want you to grab a pen and a piece of paper. And if you're walking the dogs or escaping from small children on your walk, listening to me in your ears, come back to this episode or even do a little voice recording about some things on your phone. Google Keep is my go-to. I love Google Keep. That's a great way to keep notes and ideas. So maybe you could use that on your walk, but you're going to want to take some notes because I uncover, I don't know, you can tell me how many little tips and tricks for your CAFS crew along the way. So these are things that our kids are doing, and I've seen it, and I've seen it time and time again in my 16 years experience, especially at HSC marking. So if you're thinking about joining us for marking experience in CAFS, that is next term, May the 4th, Marty and I will be joining you, and we're going to bring all of our HSC marking experience to you. Marty's been marking CAFS, I think, for close to 20 years now. Mine was 16 years. I'm no longer doing HSC marking. I retired in inverted commas last year. My 5 years as SOM was up, and I'm not going back to that. I'm going to leave on a high and let the next SOM take over. So anyway, thelearnet.com/marking CAFS is where you want to go. But I can't wait for you to dive into today's episode. You're going to get so much out of it for your kids, for you, for your experience, but also to help the kids really move past some of the mistakes they're still making. All right, guys. Hey, welcome. You're listening to the CAFS podcast. I'm your host and CAFS coach, Kelly Bell. My mission is to support community and family studies teachers like you. Whether you've been thrown in the deep end or you've been doing this for a while, I'm going to save your time, energy, and well-being while using best practice to improve knowledge, increase empowerment, and alleviate stress to help you and your students to make meaningful connections across the course. Early on, it was just me, the syllabus, and a textbook. I had no idea what I was doing, trust me. Today, I'll share strategic and purposeful applications to CAFS from my 16 years experience in the classroom and 12 years as a go-to expert across New South Wales. These strategies have been developed for you to increase student motivation, enjoyment, engagement, and HSC results. Now I spend my time supporting thousands of CAFS teachers and students inside the Learning Network through my membership, coaching and mentoring, online courses, resources, and masterclasses. My dream to help CAFS teachers full-time has become a reality. Together, we will grow and transform your CAFS crew to the next level without impacting your sleep and well-being in the process. If you're ready to teach CAFS with a more strategic approach, so your students love our subject while achieving the results they want, you're in the right place. To develop their writing, fast-track success, and improve HSC results, I've developed a free webinar for you to access at thelearnet.com/writing. Ready to get started? The CAFS podcast is your shortcut to simplified strategy to set you and your CAFS students up for success. So tune in, get inspired, and let's connect, learn, and grow together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the CAFS podcast. This is episode number 52, and today we're talking about the 5 mistakes students are still making in community and family studies, especially in the HSC, and what they can do instead of these mistakes they're making. So let's dive in to the 5 mistakes that kids are still making in our course. And look, a lot of these stem from things that we're potentially not teaching them, skills that we might not be showing them, or things that we might not actually get around to doing with our CAFS crew. So the first mistake that the kids are still making is they're not answering the whole question or not reading the question in its entirety. And what I mean by that is really unpacking the question and going, okay, what is this really asking me to do? often the kids will go into an exam, they'll rush through and they'll just put pen to paper straight away. They don't read the question in its entirety, and they're missing out on key concepts, key parts of the question that are going to be setting them up for success. So let's go back to 2019 and look at a particular question that was asked around research methodology. So question 24, discuss the suitability of one research method when conducting research on sensitive topics. Now, the kids are going to say straight away, suitability, research method. What a lot of them aren't doing is seeing that second part, that part around sensitive topics. And I remember this would have been in my second year as a supervisor of marking for New South Wales CAFS marking, which is like the head marker. If you don't know, it's like the head marker in New South Wales. There's about 110 CAFS markers that do marking every single year. And I was in charge of the whole marking operation, not the setting of the exam, but the actual marking of it. So it was my job to make sure my 12 senior markers were going to find scripts that represented how the kids went in our course, and for us together to work out a statewide standard that we're going to mark to. That was my job, obviously managing people, managing the operation, managing marking, liaising with NESA, making sure we had benchmarks that were going to display to the markers. So they really came into marking and they knew exactly what they were looking for to be able to apply their knowledge and skills of the CAFS course, but also the marking operation, the marking experience, to make accurate and reliable judgments time and time again. So I remember this particular question back in 2019, my second year as SOM. We had this question. A lot of the kids were able to address the first part of it, discuss the suitability of one research method, but what they weren't doing is actually that part around sensitive topics. And when we look at the marking guidelines, it is actually around sensitive topics. 4 and 5 out of 5. So this is a 5 marker. If the kids said nothing about sensitive topics, they could only get a 3 out of 5. Now, this is a crucial thing for the kids to think about and for us to teach as CAFS teachers, that the kids need to read every single word on that paper, every single word in their question, because often they're leaving marks on the table. It's not about them not knowing the content, it's about not reading correctly and not reading the questions properly. Now, I know this was a common mistake that our kids were making because time and time again in my 16 years experience of marking the HSE, I saw it in their responses. I saw they were missing out on crucial marks because they hadn't read the question properly. It wasn't their lack of content. Their content was awesome. They had a really good understanding of it. They were able to show what they knew, but they were missing out on crucial marks because they weren't actually reading the whole question. Now, I also knew that this was a characteristic of our Band 4-5 kids. They have great content, they have great understanding of the content, but they might misread parts of the question, or they might actually miss out on crucial parts of the question, which in this circumstance, that suitability part, that sensitive topic section, they actually left a lot of marks on the table because they didn't actually read the whole question in its entirety. So that's the first one. The kids are still not reading the question in its entirety. They're not actually answering that because they're missing out on crucial parts of the question. Now, I'm going to share with you what you can do, what the kids can do instead of that. They need to take between 30 seconds and 60 seconds, 30 seconds to a minute to run far their question. Now, if you're new to CAFS, if you're new to Kelly Bell, and you haven't heard me speak about this before, Run Far is my acronym. Another acronym, yes, I know. Another acronym to help CAFS teachers and students to unpack a question. So Run Far in a nutshell, and I offer this in my Year 12 Masterclass sessions. Within SUAVE, we've got a whole big module on Run Far of how to break it down, how to get the kids to really maximize their time. But basically it stands for read all parts of the question. Read and reread all parts of the question. Underline syllabus words, underline the Glossary of Key Word, underline anything that they need to refer back to in their examples. So if we kind of saw what this looked like, you might see that in the SUAVE course to see what that kind of unpacks, or within my master classes, I show you guys, show your kids how to actually run far their response. The next part is looking at naming and defining words that are in the question. So if we go back to our discuss the suitability of one research method, we might go, okay, I know that COLIC is our acronym for research methods. And I know that I have to do some maybe case studies, observations, possibly not the literature review. I wouldn't talk about literature review in this one. Interviews, what have I forgotten? And questionnaires. So I would kind of go automatically. I know COLIC is my acronym for that. And I know that I'm going to talk about one of those 5 in my response. You could also look at the part of conducting research. What do you do in that stage of conducting research? And then list above the question what some sensitive topics are. Now, you could only imagine what this looks like in my CAFS classroom. I would make sure my kids do this every single time. And I would hammer it home. Let's run far our question. Let's run far it. Let's run far it. Have you run far it? And I had these in my classroom, in posters and all those sorts of things. If you don't have any of those, just send me a message on Instagram, kellybell.coach, and I can send you some things that can help the kids with that. Just those visuals are really important. So we're up to N, so run far. So the F stands for formulate a plan of attack. Now, this plan of attack stemmed from something that my students were doing way back in 2007 and 8. I had this beautiful cohort. I remember I had these girls for for PASS, for sports studies when I first came to Nagel. And then they became, actually I started the school with these guys. Year 7, I remember starting at Nagel, they were in Year 7. I then had them for 9 and 10 PASS, had them, lots of them for PE, lots of them for religion when I first started. And then I had this beautiful, beautiful Year 11 and 12 PE class. I loved those kids. I took them for netball and touch. I remember being super young and being so, just really heavily invested in their experiences. And look, great class, great kids. We did a lot of Duke of Edinburgh stuff together, so that was something that also was great. And we also did the Rock of Stedford. If you haven't heard my story before, in 2008 I did the Rock of Stedford with Nagel, and it was in our very first year of doing that. We actually got to the grand final for our open division. Total another story. I was completely burnt out from that experience, but I loved it. And heaps of the girls who I taught in my PE class were actually part of the Rock of Stedford team. So look, you could only imagine we had a really good group going. I remember these 2 girls, Jess and Megan. They would kind of get their responses and they would start to unpack it and just spend maybe like 30 seconds to a minute breaking down their answer. So this kind of all stemmed from them. And at the time I was like, what are these girls doing? I remember Megan having this like little tiny lead pencil. It was like so small. Megan was quite tall. It just looked tiny against her body. And I remember her scratching around, like it was literally, I feel like scratching around her answer, like her question. And I said to her, Megan, what are you doing? She said, oh, Miss, I'm just breaking down my question. I'm like, oh, what do you mean by that? She said, well, like I do this for all of my questions. I break it down, then I kind of have a bit of a plan of attack before I start writing. And I was like, holy hell, where have you been, Kel? I didn't do that as a CAFS, as a student. I didn't take CAFS. I didn't do that as a student. I had also not been teaching my kids to do that, my students to do that. So this was like 4 years into my teaching. So I'm like, all right, we need to have a plan of attack. It has to be called something. So then I came up with the acronym RUN FAR. So once you have that formulation of a bit of a plan of attack, you're going to come up with a bit of a plan about what you're going to write about, the key points. You then go ahead and actually answer that in the space and lines provided. So the space provides the kids as a guide to what they should include, like how much detail. And in our course, for every mark, the kids will get 3 lines to work with. So if it's a 6 marker, what are we going to get? They're going to get 18 lines to work with. So having that for them and really making sure that the kids use those lines to help them. They are going to use that as a guide as to how much to write. So using the lines as a guide, answering the question in its entirety, and then going back and rereading their response. Now this on paper sounds like really time consuming, but if the kids use the marks as a guideline to how much time they're spending, like a 5-6 marker should take the kids no more than 10 marks. A 7 to 8 marker, maybe about 15 minutes. So really using that as a guide as to what to write, how much to write. It's really important. And if you listen to last week's episode, the week before with Graham, episode 15 with Graham Wright, we spoke about preparing the kids for the end game, for specific skills that they need for success in the HSC. This is one of them, taking their time and actually unpacking the question before they put pen to paper. 30 seconds to a minute is all it takes to run far the answer. So that's number one. Not reading the question completely. What they can do is run far their question. Okay, let's get into number two. So number two, I really think the kids are still recalling content. And I'll say it, and I'll say it again. I say this with my master classes with the kids, but also in the CAFS collective. The syllabus will only get you halfway. The syllabus, you could learn the syllabus off by heart, but if you don't know how to structure a response, if you don't know what examples to link back to, if you don't actually apply your understanding, you're only getting probably half marks. Now, I say this time and time again. Because I've worked with many schools in New South Wales, and just recently I worked with a school and I looked at some of their marking and we're doing some double marking. And I could see that the kids knew the content, they knew the syllabus, it was stuff on the option, they spoke about global communities, they spoke about transport, communication, they spoke about consumer services, but they didn't really get it. They recalled the content, but they didn't actually understand it. And I think what the kids are doing still is rote learning that content. And for me as a student, when I was in Year 12 back in 1999, that's what I did. I just rote learned the content. I recalled it. I tried to memorize it off by heart. I wrote lots of notes based on the content. What I wasn't doing is actually applying it. I wasn't actually demonstrating my knowledge, understanding, and skills of that content. The other thing that I think a lot of kids, the reason why kids are still doing this is because we're doing a lot of chalk and talk in class still. We might be getting the textbook out. The textbook is very dated, and I know that. I've given feedback to the editors about that you guys are looking for something. Of course, we know that that's something, but we can't teach to the syllabus. We can't teach to the textbook. We have to come up with teaching and learning activities that demonstrate our kids' knowledge, test our kids' knowledge and understanding and skills. Now, if you've bought my any of my resource packages, any of my resource booklets, I do that explicitly. Every single activity that you do in class is intentional to help prepare the kids for the end game, to help them demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and skills, because the kids are still just rote learning the syllabus, just recalling the content. They're not actually applying it. And I think time and time again at HSC marking, we would see this, that the kids know their stuff, but they're missing out marks because they're just actually applying the content. So let's kind of unpack a bit of a question. So back in 2000 and what can we go? It's 2000 and maybe 19. It's a question for groups in context. So how can the government better support this group so as to improve equity for all group members? If the kids just speak about the government and just speak about the group without actually applying it to equity or how it's going to improve equity, the kids probably will only get like 4 out of 8. 3 out of 8, 4 out of 8, because it's just the content. The content will always be there. You have to provide knowledge, understanding, and skills and opportunities for the kids to show that in class. And again, that's why I think a lot of the kids are leaving marks on the table, because we're just teaching the content at a surface level. We're not actually diving deeper with it. We're not showing the kids unseen questions to prepare them for the end game. We're not giving them opportunities to think about the content in a variety of different contexts. So again, I think that's probably why the kids are leaving marks on the table, because we're not actually doing that in class. They're not being given opportunities to show what they know through a variety of different activities to demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and skills. So that was number 2, recalling content. The kids are still rote learning the syllabus, rote learning the content. Okay, number 3, I hope this is really practical for you, because I know sometimes when I do these episodes, I could talk about CAFS, I think, underwater or till the cows come home. And sometimes I don't know, I think I'm a culprit of just expecting people know this stuff and taking it for granted that I have all this experience of 18 years presenting CAFS, HSC marking as a supervisor of marking, presenting for the best part of 13 years across New South Wales professional learning. I take it for granted. So I hope this has been really helpful so far. Okay, let's dive into mistake number 3. And again, I'll talk about some of these things that I have spoken to CAFS people, to CAFS teachers in the CAFS collective especially, and as well as in my coaching and mentoring sessions. And that mistake is not using a variety of examples in their answer. So what I mean by that is the kids just using the same type of example in their response, the same type of idea that they're going to show the HSC marker. And of course, I did marking for 16 years. I started in 2007. I was super young. I was like, 26, 25? And I had only been teaching the course for about 4 years. And I put my hand up for it. I applied and I got it. I was really shocked. But the course was relatively new back then. So the first HSC went through, I think, 2001. So it was pretty new, 2001 or 2002. So I hadn't been going for very long, and I thought, well, I love CAFS. I'm just going to put my hand up for it. Little did I know that it was going to change my career. It was going to change the whole way I approached HSC and even my students in the junior years. So at HSC marking, I would see this year after year, that the kids would have not much variety in their examples. Again, what I mean by that is like the kids just again have that surface level understanding of different examples. They either choose things that you've taught them, so you can kind of see like the resources that people are using because it's the same example. So you might have a cohort that comes through. In the old days, you could see that because at marking we would mark a bundle, and that bundle would represent a cohort or a school. So you could use it. You could see the resources that teachers were using, mainly from the textbook. You could see examples that were given in the textbook, and that was in a kid's response. Now I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to challenge you to come up with examples that are outside the box, that are very different to what's in the textbook, very different to the Cambridge checkpoints that Kate Rayner and I have written together. I want you to think of different things that the kids are going to use to demonstrate their knowledge, understanding, and skills of the course, because there's still not enough variety. They will say things like, and I've used this example before, so please ask me for another one. If they're talking about, let's say, services for a group, the kids might go, okay, I'm studying homeless people, I'm studying age. Some Vinnies, they do a really good job of helping old people because I see it in the media. I also think Mission Australia do a really great job, and also maybe Red Cross. See how those three, especially the Vinnies and Red Cross, they're very similar in terms of charity work. Often a lot of them are church-based services, so charitable organisations. So Vinnies, we also have Anglicare, we also have Red Cross. They're all kind of doing the same sort of thing. How awesome would it be if the kids actually use things like Orange Sky Laundry, if they use things like Co-Shelter, if they use things like McKillop Family Services, if they use things like something specific to your own area, like your suburb, your location. So what I'll kind of introduce you guys to is where this is stemmed from. So in our performance band descriptors, a lot of these things are actually in there. And at HSC judging, you actually use the performance band descriptors to actually judge the paper for that year in accordance with that. Of course, with the standards package that have been developed, 2015 is the most recent one. So go back onto the NESA website and have a look at that standards package. That will show the standard that we should be getting our kids to write towards if we want them to be in that 5-6 bracket. If that last response again to that 6, what the kids are going to do, that standard. The 3 into a 4, the 4 into a 5. What are they actually doing in relation to the performance band descriptors? Again, if you have never seen this stuff, please shout out, let me know, because I take all this for granted. It's on the NESA website now. You can download that package, 2015, and it shows you responses. This was a type of kid who just scraped into that band 6 this year. This is the type of kid who just scraped into that band 5 this year. What type of response that they would write? Again, performance band descriptors, common grade scale, yes, for year 11, but performance band descriptors for year 12 and the standards package for year 12. So in my coaching mentoring sessions, I show you guys what this looks like. And I just know, I know now from teaching the course, but also from judging and being the supervisor of marking and marking for 16 years, I know what it takes. Like I see this in the kids. What they're often doing is, if you guys want to flick out the performance band descriptors, I'll actually show you what this means. So when the kids are looking at it, the 1, 2, 3, 4 dot point down. So 1, 2, 3, 4 proposes, develops, this is for a band 6, proposes, develops and sustains arguments based on relevant research and examples to justify points of view, that justification. If we jump down to a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sustains arguments using relevant research and individual experience. It's not really, it's a bit more general. Jump down to number 4. Draws on personal experience to support discussion. Band 3 relies heavily on personal experience to support discussion. This is where those examples come in. The kids are still not able to see that content outside the box. So what I've shared with a lot of my CAFS Collective members, so my CAFS Collective membership teachers, is to use SUAVE, very SUAVE examples. And what SUAVE basically stands for is getting the kids to think about specific examples, unique examples. They are applied, they're varied, and they're also explicit to the question. Now, if you'd like to see what that looks like, you can jump over to STRIVE, which is an amazing course to give you all the strategies and templates and ideas to help kids improve their writing to fast track their success in CAFS. thelearnet.com/strive is where you need to go to check it out. But the kids need to use SUAVE examples in their answers to stand out from the crowd. We don't want the kids to be using personal experiences through their examples. We don't want them to be using just a textbook. We want them to be using explicit examples that are going to make them stand out from the crowd. And it is to really show those levels. So to show that extensive knowledge and understanding for a band 6, to show that thorough knowledge and understanding for a band 5, and that sound knowledge and understanding for a band 4. We don't want our kids to be in a band 2 or 3. We want them to get a high number of band 4, 5s and 6s every single year. Okay, let's head to number 4. So number 4, a common mistake the kids are still making is that they're not demonstrating language and application of the Glossary of Key Words. Now, I have a specific example to give you here, which I absolutely love, and it was from the 2020 HSC. It was a question about caring, and I remember this really explicitly because the kids they had really good content. They weren't actually addressing parts of the question. So actually, let's use another example because that one doesn't demonstrate it what I would like. So say, for example, the kids are going to have some sort of analysis question. It might be analyze the relationship between, for year 11, analyze the relationship between personal management strategies and well-being. The kids have to show that connection, that relationship between personal management strategies and well-being. A lot of the kids will just explain personal management strategies and explain well-being. They won't actually bring them together. So I would really love for you to start to look at what this looks like with your kids. So making sure they actually have a clear understanding about what each of the Glossary of Key Words actually do and how they're very different for each question. Now, you've heard me talk about this a lot. I'm pretty sure if you follow me on socials, you'll see it time and time again. Every single Glossary of Key Word is very different. They each have a unique function, and we should be teaching these kids to our kids all the way from year 7. If you're at a senior school, make sure you have a conversation with people at your middle campus, because the kids still do not understand these Glossary of Key Words. And I also think we're not teaching it. We've come a long way, I know that, but I still think there are schools out there who are not pushing the Glossary of Key Words enough. and they're just expecting the kids to learn them. So each glossary of keyword is very unique. It has its own function. It has its own process, and I show that process to you guys inside SUAVE. My SUAVE course is probably my favorite course I've written, because a lot of the things that I've shared with you guys in there are things that we're not even taught at uni. Like, how do you teach kids a paragraph, or how to write a paragraph? How do you teach kids how to assess something, how to analyze something, how to explain it, how to propose it? There's all a different method for each one. So when the kids don't demonstrate language and application of the glossary of keywords, they're probably missing out on crucial marks that they would have actually received if they did that better. So what the kids can do is actually have a look at, I'm actually grabbing up the module so I can actually talk to this properly. Kelly Bell should have had this organised before. But what they're not doing is actually unpacking the glossary of keyword. Remember, each of them there's a doing word. So let's let's go back into time and have a look at a question. So let's look at this question here. 2019, groups in context again. You'll notice a lot of the groups in context questions are higher order. That's done on purpose. The exam committee have targeted that as a band 2 to 6. We want those band 6 kids to be challenged. We want all the kids to be challenged by each of the questions, but they're really looking for that. Is it actually a higher order question? This one is. So to what extent does advocacy assist in creating a positive and supportive environment for this group? Now, in a nutshell, I'm just thinking back to that question from 2019. A lot of the kids can talk to advocacy. They can talk about positive and supportive environments for the group. What they don't do is actually address to what extent part, that judgment part. Now, if you have a look at the marking guidelines for that year, 2019 is where you want to go, the NESA website, look for the exam pack, and then the marking guidelines, you'll see this question. So to recap, to what extent does advocacy assist in creating a positive and supportive environment for this group? To what extent is like a judgment, evaluate or assess? Those things are the same. Okay, to what extent equals evaluate equals assess. Same. Let me know if you have any questions, because if you didn't know that before, there you go, a bit of a tip. Okay, so if you look at the marking guidelines, it tells us that for an 8 out of 8, the kids have to show a clear link between advocacy and to what extent this creates a positive and supportive environment. That's for 8. They have to do that. For 6 to 7, they provide a link, open brackets with an S, maybe one link between advocacy and how it creates a positive and supportive environment. If we jump down to the 4 to 5, they actually have no connection to assess, no connection to what extent. See how the kids are missing out on crucial marks there. They have the content dialed in, they identify the group, they provide information on advocacy, they attempt to link advocacy to the creation of positive and supportive environment. There's some great examples. What they haven't done is actually address the glossary of key word. So I honestly believe, hand on heart, that the kids are leaving about 3 to 4 marks on the table every single time they actually complete that paper, each assessment task. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you have to come over and see SUAVE. You have to come and check it out. Of course, I show you this. I show you what this actually does, how to differentiate between each of these responses inside marking experience in CAFS. So if you want me to show you how to do it, marking experience in CAFS is your best bet. If you want to improve that with your kids, SUAVE is your option. So if you've never done HSC marking before, you wouldn't have known that. It is a really intricate process, and you can only imagine actually, for me, in my job, my role is to make sure that we were actually assessing, marking the kids according to the statewide standard consistently year after year for 5 years. So I I loved HSC marking. And if you want to see what it's like to do some HSC marking, it's not marking the HSC, of course, but we're simulating that. We're actually giving you an experience, an opportunity to do HSC marking. If you are keen to join us, Marty and I are going to be presenting that next term, Thursday, week 2, May the 4th. And we can't wait to show you what that looks like. So that was number 4, really making sure the kids have a really good understanding that each of the glossary of keywords is unique. They're explicit. We need to be using explicit language to show and demonstrate what the kids know within those glossary of keywords. They're a verb. They have a different function for each one. Okay, last one, but not least, is not explicitly linking to wellbeing. Now, I've taught CAFS for 18 years. 2.5 of those have been coaching CAFS teachers, and then 16 years in the classroom. And I remember back in 2010, possibly, I was that was my first year as a senior marker. So you've got the SOM, then you've got the senior marker who leads like a team of markers. Then you've got your markers. So your markers, your team leader or like your head teacher, like a senior marker. Then you've got the SOM who's like a principal. That's kind of the best way to explain it. But as a senior marker, I was appointed in 2010. I remember Cass, our eldest, I was breastfeeding her. I think I shared this story a couple of weeks ago, but I was, I think we were in Rose Hill Racecourse, and I remember just the floors being super squeaky, like the chairs at marking always seemed to be so squeaky. You could hear, a pin drop in the room. It was so quiet. The chairs, every time people would actually get out of their seat, it would make a noise. And I remember sitting at marking that year and going, okay, I'm a senior marker. Like, what the hell? You've been appointed as a senior marker. You're going to lead this team of markers. I needed to make sure I was on the game. And I remember sitting in front of my my marking team, finding scripts that could best display what we were looking for our 15 marker. I was given the 15 marker that year, and I was teamed up with another senior marker, and we were marking the option. And I remember thinking, God, I love the option, but I don't really know what I'm looking for. And then my colleague showed me what we were actually looking for a 12 out of 15, for a 10 out of 15, for a 13 out of 15. And I was shocked. And I'm not sure about you, but have you ever experienced something where you thought you've known something only to find out that what you've been teaching the kids is absolutely incorrect? I was teaching them the content, but I wasn't teaching them the skill in actually using well-being in their answer, because that's part of the rubric. Go and check it out. Go and look at any past HSC exam for CAFS. There's a rubric. There's a set of guidelines that we look for at HSC marking to show the kids this is what you need to do to be up there. This is what you need to do to get those, the 10 to 15 out of 15. You have to include well-being in every single paragraph. You have to show that really good understanding of well-being and link it back to the question. Now, this is a really crucial part of our CAFS course. And I know from doing professional learning, from doing presenting HSC sessions for the best part of my career, people inside the CAFS collective, even inside coaching and mentoring sessions with highly experienced teachers, they're still not teaching the kids this. And they're just, the kids are still being really superficial with what they include. So the marking, the rubric tells us that the kids are going to be assessed on a couple of things. The first one is demonstrate knowledge and understanding of societal influences on well-being relevant to the question. That's the money one. That's what's costing our kids the marks. Our average across the state is still a 5, a 7 and an 8 out of 15 for our options. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I don't want my kids to get half marks for their response. I want them to nail it. And what they need to do is start including well-being in their answers and not kind of tacking it on to the end. Like I said, I did some marking for a school, and a lot of the kids were saying this impacts positively on the individual's well-being, full stop. This has a positive impact on their social well-being because they can communicate with each other. That's not enough. The kids actually have to explicitly say, this impacts positively on the physical well-being of the individuals as they have more time due to the household technologies that are available to them to spend as a family. They have to justify it. They have to back it up. So I really think that idea around well-being is still making the kids miss out on crucial marks. So this has been a really jam-packed episode. I'd love for you to let me know what you've enjoyed about today's episode. But let's do a quick recap because we covered 5 mistakes our kids are still making in CAFS and what they can do instead. So the first one was around not reading the question completely. What they can do instead is run far, break down their question before they actually start to put pen to paper. Number 2 is that they're still recalling content. They're still regurgitating content from the syllabus, from your notes, from your Google slides, from your PowerPoints, from the textbook. What they need to be doing more of is demonstrating knowledge, understanding, and skills. What we can do as CAFS teachers is actually providing the kids with a variety of different learning experiences to do that. Number 3 was not using variety in their answers and their examples. And what we can do instead is actually use SUAVE examples in our answer to make us stand out from the crowd. Make the kids stand out from the crowd. Number 4 is they're not demonstrating the language and application of the Glossary of Key Words. What they need to be doing instead is using explicit language to show what each of those words are, to show the skills in it and to also show what they're looking for. Something I forgot to mention was if you're looking for like a tangible tool, again, SUAVE has lots of those. Like I said, it's my favorite thing. But I also have some Glossary of Key Words cards if you're looking just for a really quick activity to use with the kids. Head over to learn.com/resources to grab those. But also number 5 was really unpacking the idea that the kids are still not linking explicitly to wellbeing. They're just tacking it on the end. And what they need to do is embed it throughout their whole response. So all these things I'm sharing with you guys today are lessons I've learned from my 16 years of HSC marking. 4 of those years as a marker, 10 of those years as a senior marker, maybe a bit less than actually, if I'm doing my maths right. Let me know if my maths is wrong. And then 5 of those years of actually as a supervisor of marking. And if you haven't done marking before, if you're new to CAFS, or if you're experienced, if you've never had the opportunity, or if you've been like, I just never wanted to do it, Marty and I would love for you to join us on May the 4th, be with you, May the 4th, I think I've used that joke before, sorry team, on May the 4th, and we will show you what it looks like in CAFS. Today I've shared with you why. We're going to show you what it looks like in our marking experience course. So head over to the learnnet.com/marking CAFS to check it out, to register. We are capping it at 30 teachers only. A lot of other professional learning kind of have, jam-packed. They also don't cover all parts of the course. The sections that we're covering is all of it. So research methodology, we also have groups, parenting and caring, and the option as well. I want to show you what the option looks like and what you can do straight away to help the kids really improve their marks. So thanks so much for today's episode. It was a bit of a long one. I didn't plan it to be this long, but when I start and I keep going. So if you have any questions about what I've covered today, please come over on Instagram and have a chat with me. Find me on Facebook if you're a Facebook user. Kelly Bell is on Facebook, and then kellybell.coach is on Insta. But send me an email. Let me know what you thought of today's episode. And I hope you've come up with a whole big list of things that you can actually implement in your classroom. Thanks so much, guys. This podcast was brought to you by the CAFS Collective, which is the only CAFS membership providing ongoing support to CAFS teachers across New South Wales. Check it out at thelearnnet.com, along with so many free resources to support your CAFS journey. If you loved today's episode, please share it with your colleagues. Take a screenshot and tag me on Instagram at kellybell.coach. Don't forget to stay connected by subscribing to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you devoured today's episode, I'll be so honoured if you could please leave me a review. Come and say hi. Send me a DM on Instagram so we can work together in one of my courses, resources, masterclasses, coaching, mentoring, or membership. I'm Kelly Bell. See you again next week. Let's continue to connect, learn, and grow together to make a huge impact on the students we teach.